Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to do what I've kind of treated as kind of an annual, Valentine's thing that I do, is that basically I take a video to kind of talk about some of my favorite fictional couples. These couples can range from anywhere between video games to anime to TV shows and movies, comic books, whatever the case may be. Also note that none of these are in any particular order. First on this year's list, I have Allison and Donnie from the TV show Orphan Black. Now the reason why they're one of my favorite couples is first and foremost just where their story goes. Like obviously they're married, their marriage is kind of on the rocks, they've got kids and everything, but things get complicated when it's like, cool, people in our lives, Clone Club figures out people in their lives might have been sent to, keep an eye on them, and Allison thinks, it might have been her neighbor / best friend, but then she started thinking Donnie because he was acting super suspicious, but she was like, oh no, it turned out not to be Donnie, and then it super turned out to be Donnie. So their marriage started off pretty rough. There was a whole hog tying him because he was a part of all this, but he didn't know what role it was. He didn't really know what was going on, but then eventually he found out about Clone Club. So it started off a thing of like, oh man, Donnie's such a douchebag, I can't believe he did this to Allison. And then they turned things around. They worked on their marriage and they were eventually in a good spot. The reason why I also love them so much too, and what makes them so good, is just because they're kind of like the suburban couple, and like that dynamic of them also being the biggest screw-ups. I mean, yes, everyone plays their roles in pushing the plot forward, but like Donnie and Allison typically try to be as far away from everything else, but they end up causing the most havoc in their own way. It's like, oh, we're gonna do something that ends up blowing up in all our faces to the point someone else has to step in and fix our mess, and they're just like are my favorite lovable screw-ups, and they always brought me so much joy in the show, so I had to include them on the list because they're just so entertaining. You're just like, like I said, just my favorite screw-ups. Next on the list we have Fitz and Simmons from Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. The reason why I love this couple so much is because, well, obviously they complement each other very well, both being very smart, being the geniuses on the teams, being the scientists of the team who end up coming up with a lot of the solutions and techs that, S.h.i.e.L.D. uses to deal with their respective situations. But why I also included them too is because they have a very Romeo and Juliet-esque relationship in the regard of there's always something that's, pulling them apart. I mean, it ends up being something that even Fitz kind of gets scared about, that he's like, man, I think the universe is literally trying to split us apart and keep us apart, because, I mean, it's just one thing after another. I mean, whether it's getting dropped to the bottom of the ocean, whether it's being separated because Simmons ends up on a different planet, whether it's just the fact is that Simmons got sent into not only space but also the future, and then also there's a whole aspect of, spoilers, Fitz ended up dying, but then it was a time paradox thing because this was Fitz who got frozen just so he could get to the future, who came back to the past with them, but the moment he died, there's still the Fitz that was frozen in space waiting to get to I think he was in space at the time. I don't remember if he was still on Earth at the time when he was frozen, but that Fitz who was freezing himself to be that Fitz in the future. Time paradox stuff. It's just there was always something, but that's also the beautiful nature of the relationship, that despite what happens, I left out the framework, can't forget about that whole shenanigans where, oh cool, like there's a super evil, he's in the framework and he's a super evil version of himself. I could not say super to save my life. But it's like, despite the obstacles that found its way through them, they always found a way back to each other. It's almost like, yeah, it's kind of destined to be. We're always meant to be. We're always going to find our way to each other. So it makes their relationship so amazing and beautiful. And like I said, they complement each other so well. So next up on my list is Clark and Lois. Now this is like one of those power couples, which I am not well versed in the comic books, so I don't know all the ins and outs of their relationships. But like growing up, Superman and Lois, Clark and Lois are just like one of those relationships, just like Peter and MJ. It's just one of those things of like, oh, you just known this, like they're destined to be together. It's always meant to be. And I've always loved different interpretations of like, how they got to where they were. Like I love their love story and Smallville in particular. Like it took a long time before they got to where they were, especially considering like obviously like Lois ended up finding out about Clark's secret before he had the chance to tell her, but she waited until he told her. Like, it was just like, seeing the progression of that love story was always so beautiful to me, and just like how they complement each other. Obviously it can change from interpretation, you know, because so many people have, you know, written and done the comics, but even just live action wise or even animated wise, there's just different interpretations of both of these characters. One in particular version, you know, aside from the Smallville versions where it was played by Tom Welling as Clark / Superman, and Erica Durance as Lois, my current favorite, which, you know, might be just recency bias, is on the show Superman and Lois, where Superman / Clark is portrayed by Tyler Hoechlin, and Lois is portrayed by Elizabeth Tulloch. And the reason why I like this version of them in particular, because once again, I'm not well versed in the comic books, but this is a different side of their relationship we never get to see. I mean, this is them in the future. They're already married. They have 2 twin sons who are teenagers, and seeing them balance it all, and just like, yeah, they kind of have their ups and their downs. Because I even love that this season has tackled, like, oh man, like, you know, the character Kyle is like, oh, I thought you guys were the perfect couple, so for you guys to be arguing, it's like, yeah, but like any couple, they have their ups and their downs. And obviously, like, even in season 1, they touched on like the complications of like Clark's abilities and some issues that arose in the relationship because of it, because he'd always be listening with his super hearing, and she's like, yo, that's an invasion of privacy. So that was kind of a hurdle they had to come over. But just seeing how they work together, just not as like, you know, as partners, you know, and how they complement each other, how they're there for each other, how, yes, Clark worries about her, but he doesn't try to stop her from doing what she does best, and that's being the world's greatest reporter. And she has her complications, but she's also learned to accept and know, like, right, if Clark's out there saving the world, you know, but also balancing, like, you know, trying to keep and ground him in a sense of, right, it's okay to be this superhero, be Superman, but also you need to be here for us and your family. How like they complement each other in that regard, and just like the cute moments that they have as a couple is so amazing, and just balancing all that while also being parents is just, I don't know, this ends up being like currently my favorite version of Clark and Lois. Once again, I am saying that I will admit there is a bit of recency bias in it. So next up on my list is Zari and Nate from DC's Legend. So tomorrow, another DC couple I'm using. The reason why I like them so much is obviously like it's just the nature of like it's such a cute pairing that I don't think either one of them saw it coming. I've talked about this in the past. It is interesting, and even Nate kind of realizes it himself, how he has this complicated nature of like being with kind of almost unavailable women, because his relationships have always been with women who are just complicated circumstances, whether it be Amaya, who was from the past, who was always going to have to eventually go back to her original time, and even Zari, who's from the future. So obviously that relationship, spoilers, has taken even more of a complicated turn, because the Zari he was with is from an alternate timeline that no longer exists, but she still exists on some level inside of the totem, because I forgot what the exact circumstances. I think just the totem in general protected that version of her, so she's always been alive there in some shape or form. And so like obviously making that work, if like cool, his Zari being Zari 1.0 and the Zari from this new timeline that was created in season 4 by her in particular, trying to say, you know, because she tried to do, because her main goal was always to save her brother, and that in turn, by changing things and, you know, not staying aboard the ship, she was affected by the timeline changing, and that led to Zari 2.0 being created. So balancing that all out, you know, dating your girlfriend while she's, you know, a different person while also still being the same person, because that same person you're in love with is inside of a magical totem, which sometimes she'll switch places with her new timeline version of herself. So 1.0 will switch with 2.0 and so on and so forth. So it's a very complicated relationship, but they are making it work, even to the point that Nate, currently where things are, once again spoilers, is considering to move into the magical totem with her, just because he wants to be with her. He loves her, and yes, there's complications to it, but they're trying to find a way through it and finding a way to make it work. And I think they just make such a cute couple. Next up, we have Hardison and Parker from Leverage. To me, they are one of the cutest couples. I love their dynamic. Obviously, pretty early on, it's a pretty obvious thing that like Hardison is very has a thing for Parker. It's not always clear that Parker feels the same way, but in other cases, it's like, no, it's pretty clear even early on that she kind of had a thing for him. Like when they went their separate ways at the end of season 1, she's like, yeah, I expected you to come find me. He was like, yeah, yeah, I looked everywhere for you, but she didn't make it the easiest to find her, because I think it was a little bit of fear, because being like really close to people isn't something Parker's very good at. Like, Hardison is someone who wears his heart on his sleeves. Parker is a little more reserved. Like, just normal human stuff, interactions and stuff, is something that she had to learn over the course of the series. And I think especially with what we've gotten in Leverage Redemption, she's definitely grown even more in the time that we've been away from her. But I think her and Hardison are such a neat team. Like, obviously, like, they complement each other so well. Obviously, like, in the beginning, she didn't kind of get a lot of his nerdy references, but now, like, even with Redemption, we realize, like, oh my god, like, they're kind of on the same wavelength even more now. Because Hardison, out of anyone, is the one amongst the team who really helped open her up a lot more. And, you know, even moments, there's that one of the cases where they were helping out, and like Parker was super jealous, and she didn't really know what was going on, because it's like Hardison was kind of hers in her mind, but she never really let him know. And it's like, oh, here's someone else kind of encroaching on my territory. And it was this cute thing, because like she never has been big into displaying her feelings, but like I think he, you know, like I said, someone who wears their heart on their sleeves, you know, meeting the thief that kind of, once again, didn't know how to really be human to some extent. It's a neat and beautiful relationship that we've seen blossom and grow. Like I said, I'm glad we have Leverage Redemption to show us like even more how much they've grown as a couple. Just, I mean, but even just on our own, how much Parker's grown. So, and how that relationship and them working together has played a significant role in that. So I think it's just a beautiful relationship. We have Wanda and Vision from Marvel, another Marvel couple I'm choosing from. Obviously, Wanda and Vision aren't characters I'm well versed in when it comes to the comics. My understanding of the characters comes specifically from the MCU, but more specifically, I want to talk about them in WandaVision. Obviously, because yes, I mean, it was kind of an issue people had, is that obviously this relationship happened a little bit here and there over the course of a couple movies. It actually really started in Civil War, and then it got a little bit more in Infinity War. And obviously, things happened in Endgame, well, Infinity War and Endgame. But obviously, WandaVision is where we really got to see the relationship strive, which obviously there is a darker element to that when you think about, like, well, to be fair, Wanda was in kind of control of him the entire time. He was kind of a manifestation of her. But it was also like, right, this was her at her low point. She was driven by grief because she hadn't really connected with someone in so long. Like, it was kind of like the first relationship she has since her brother died. At least she had her brother there to kind of balance her out after losing their parents. But in his circumstances, it's like, right, she kind of had no family left. And Vision kind of, you know, the Avengers, they're a pseudo family, but there was never the same dynamic with them, the connection with them, the same way she had with Vision. You know, they, especially when you get deeper into the fact is that they were both born from the Mind Stone in certain regards, or at least the Mind Stone awakened certain aspects of Wanda we now realize were always there within her, and it was also what was used as the foundation for making Vision as well. So they have that even deeper, like, magical, like, celestial connection through an Infinity Stone. But also knowing that, you know, just seeing the fun and just dynamic between these characters when given this chance, this extended look into the relationship. Once again, you also have to, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, considering it was extenuating circumstances. It was also a tragic thing that kind of brought them together again in WandaVision, was her grief of missing him. But there is this beautiful love and messaging behind WandaVision in that regard, you know, the line of what is grief not, if not love persevering, you know, and that line being so beautiful and resonating so much when it comes to the relationship, that yes, even at the end, you know, having to sacrifice what you love. And so their story doesn't end on a happy note, but I don't think that's the final chapter ended. Obviously there is the other Vision that's out there now, but he has all the memories, just none of the emotions. And that the emotions, the core, like the love that Wanda and Vision had still exists within her, and I think eventually she will be able to put that into the new Vision and they can finally be together again. You know, very much like the whole Fitz and Simmons situation, it almost feels like fate and destiny is always tearing them apart in some shape or form, whether it be finding themselves on opposite sides during Civil War, watching him die, not only having to kill him herself to make sure that Thanos didn't get the Infinity Stone because he was asking her to, but then like to have him use the time stone to rewind time and then kill him himself just so he can make sure to get the stone. So there are so many layers of beauty and tragedy to the whole relationship, but those elements of tragedy are only tragic because there is so much love and beauty in that very relationship. So that brings this year's, fictional couples list. This is like, what, 4 or 5? I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It might even be 6. But whatever the case may be, yeah. Let me know your thoughts about the couples I included. Like, were any of the couples I mentioned couples you're familiar with? Like, have you seen the respective shows, got to know those relationships? I do apologize if they were somewhat spoilers for you in certain regards, but are there any couples you disagree with? I mean, once again, this is just a personal preference on my part, but like I said, are there some that you agree with, some you disagree with? Like, oh, I didn't really feel that relationship in this regard when it comes to said couple. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.